The Aboriginal culture is a fascinating insight into ancient human societies. They are thought to be the descendants of the first humans to leave Africa, making them one of the oldest cultures on the planet. The Aboriginal culture was left relatively undisturbed by the machinations of the West until 1606, when the Dutch were the first Westerners to land on its shores. Over 160 years later, Captain James Cook landed on the continent, almost 300 years after the West began colonizing America. Before contact with the West, Australian history was faithfully recorded in oral traditions, revealing a great deal about prehistoric Australia. In this video, we will explore 5 fascinating mysteries about pre-colonial Australia. Number 1. How and when did humans get to Australia? Human settlements in Australia predate many other territories throughout the world, and it is thought that early humans inhabited Australia as long as 70,000 BCE. That's at least 10,000 years before the earliest settlements in Europe. How humans made it to Australia has been speculated about for years, and the migration pattern of early humans as they spread from Africa and moved across the globe is a fascinating concept. It has been a long-standing belief that the ancestors of the Aboriginal people arrived in Australia on boats, and that they could be the oldest population of humans living outside Africa. A genetic study of Aboriginal Australians suggests they are all related to a common ancestor who arrived on the mainland around 50,000 years ago. The boat theory asserts that humans traveled on primitive boats from Southeast Asia to North Australia. However, recent studies suggest they may have walked, at least for the majority of the way. Researchers were inspired to look for a different possible route, as archaeological evidence for human settlements along the southern route was not as old as evidence of human activity found in Australia. One of the researchers, Shimona Keeley, postulates that migrating humans traveled to Australia between 70,000 and 50,000 years ago, when the Indonesian islands, New Guinea, and Australia were one continent called Sahul. However, this theory does not discount these early Australians as seafarers, as some islands in the identified route were never connected to the mainland. Still, the proposed route demonstrates strong evidence of the earliest human maritime exploration. The team hopes to conduct excavations on some of the islands identified as part of the proposed route to find evidence of human settlements predating the oldest sites found in Australia. Number 2. Wordy Wang. Near Little River in Victoria lies an irregular ovoid arrangement of around 100 basalt stones, which range from small rocks to large stones up to 1 meter in height. The stones were once considered ceremonial, but researchers revealed in 2016 that the stones might have been used for a much more practical and scientific reason. New evidence suggests that the stones may have been used to plot the sun's movements, enabling Aboriginal astronomers to track the winter and summer solstices. According to a team from Monash University, these Neolithic astronomers would have used the landscape around them to figure out the correct placement of the sites. They deduced this from the arrangement of 3 large rocks, which seemed to mimic 3 large mountains surrounding the stones. This theory would mean that Wordy Wang would be the first physical evidence of humans using tools to observe the movement of celestial bodies in the sky. One suggested purpose for this astronomical calendar is agricultural, as it might have enabled the builders to keep a close track of the seasons. Around the site, archaeologists have discovered terraces used for farming, called gilgis, which led them to believe that there were permanent villages in the area. If this theory is verified, it provides a tantalizing glimpse into the lives of the ancient Aboriginals and would demonstrate that the tribes were not always nomadic. The site may prove that there was sedentary agriculture in Australia long before current estimations. Wordy Wang is sometimes referred to as Australia's Stonehenge, but this stone ovoid is actually much older and may have been erected over 5,000 years before Stonehenge was built. This dating would mean that Wordy Wang was constructed roughly around the time as Göbekli Tepe, which is currently held to be one of the world's oldest human-made monuments. Number 3. The link between Australia and the Amazon. Given the expansive ocean that lies between Australia and South America, it is surprising that in 2014, genome tests revealed that several Amazonian tribes have more genetic markers in common with Aboriginals than any other Eurasian cultures. Based on this evidence, American and Danish researchers believe that the Aboriginal and Amazonian ancestors traveled east out of Africa together, and at some point the group split. Some of the group headed south and ended up in Australia, while others headed northeast, crossing the Bering Land Bridge into the American continent. As the millennia passed and the continents shifted, these two tribes, unaware of the other's existence, were further divided by the South Pacific Ocean. The discovery signals that there were multiple migrations to the Americas. The Australasian group that has been dubbed Population Y is thought to have arrived on the American continent over 15,000 years ago, which would be around 55,000 years after the other part of their group made it to Australia. Incredibly, a humanoid skull found in south-central Brazil appears to be the descendant of Population Y. The skull was female and nicknamed Louisa by anthropologists. Her discovery was the first indicator of Population Y, later proved by genome research. Louisa was almost 2,000 years older than any other skeleton found in the Americas. A facial reconstruction of the skull shows strikingly Aboriginal features, very different from the Amerindians and North Asians, who also populated South America much later. It is incredible to think that after leaving Africa, the human race made it to what later Europeans would dub undiscovered continents before settling in Europe. Number 4. They were the only culture to properly document the rising sea levels. Because Aboriginal history is purely oral, it may seem impossible that they are the only culture to have historical accounts of rising sea levels. Yet, studies have proven that this is the case. After the last ice age around 10,000 years ago, we know that sea levels rose dramatically, flooding many once inhabited areas around the globe. This history was not just recorded by a small pocket of tribes, but from coast to coast across Australia. Not only have memories of rising sea levels been recorded, but also life before and during the last glacial period. Some of the stories date back to when fewer than 10 million humans populated the planet, and the aspects of Aboriginal storytelling have helped to keep the historical retellings true. The history has been passed down using kin-related responsibilities, meaning that each member of a tribe or family retains certain pieces of information, helping to keep the facts pure. Some tribes can even identify now-sunken islands by name. Geography professor Patrick Nunn and linguist Nicholas Reed have identified 18 Aboriginal stories describing ancient environmental changes. The stories illustrate the permanent coastal flooding, being able to wade out to islands that now can only be reached by boat, and land that was once occupied that is currently underwater. Many of the tribes describe Port Phillip Bay at a time when the area was mainly dry land, described as kangaroo land. According to the tribes in the area, they used the plains as a hunting ground to catch kangaroos and opossum. The Ngarrindjeri people have an ancestral character named Nurunderi, who, in one story, chases his wives to kangaroo land, which they can reach by foot. In anger, Nurunderi makes the seas rise and turns his wives into rocks that now jut out of the water between the island and the mainland. If this story originated when sea levels were low enough to be able to walk to the island, it would date to somewhere between 9,800 and 10,650 years ago. Other stories include how the shoreline used to reach the reef, and there was a river mouth where Fitzroy Island is now. Many of the islands surrounding Australia used to be joined to the mainland, including those between the shores of Perth and Fremantle. According to legend, the area was once thickly covered in trees, which eventually caught fire and burnt with an intensity that split the ground, causing the sea to rush in and divide the islands from the mainland. While the rising sea levels were witnessed by many other cultures, as evidenced by the multiple flood myths from across the globe, the Aboriginals are the only ones who have preserved the memory as an actual event rather than completely giving it over to mythology. It is possible that other cultures also conserved the event in their oral history, but the tradition of passing down records through stories was altered or lost altogether through various external forces. The validity of the Aboriginal stories stems from the fact that they can talk about and identify the areas that were once land, unlike the Atlantis story, for example, where the location and factual basis are unknown and still disputed today. Number 5. Uluru. In the Great Western Desert, close to the geographical center of Australia, lies a single stone rock that is larger than an island. In 1873, a surveyor called William Gosse named the landmark after Sir Henry Ayres, the chief secretary of South Australia at the time. However, it has an older name and one that may originate from before the last ice age: Uluru. Uluru is a large rock known as an inselberg and is thought to be the remains of an ancient mountain range that has been slowly eroded over time. It was once believed to be a meteorite, but now geologists think that this large magnetic mound is a 550 million year old piece of Arcos sandstone, and most of it is buried underground. The mythology of Uluru goes that the series of caves on the north end of the top represents a camp made by their ancestors in Chikurpa, or the Dreamtime, where they initiated their youth. Some caverns are said to have been the camp that housed the fathers and uncles, alongside the eagle chick that provided feathers for the ceremony. Other caves represent where the elders stayed, and a series of flat rocks were the women's camp. In the northwest of Uluru stands a pillar separate from the main rock called the Kangaroo Tail. This ceremonial pole was supposedly stolen from the camp of ancestors called the Mala by a devil dingo. The dingo was sung into existence by other elders in the west who wanted to punish the Mala for refusing to provide eagle feathers to their cousins. Legend has it that the dingo chased the Mala and their guests, the carpet snake people, off Uluru. Enormous marks and paw-shaped caves at the base of the rock still mark their escape route. Australia also has another huge rock called Burringura, also known as Mount Augustus. This rock is twice as large as Uluru and is named after a boy who is said to have wandered into a forbidden area uninvited during Chikurpa. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Australia, check out our book, History of Australia, a captivating guide to Australian history starting from the Aborigines through the Dutch East India Company, James Cook, and World War II to the present. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.